Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk about is called shadow functions. Now, this is something that I just learned about recently. Some people have asked me about it a little bit, so I wanted to dive into it just a little bit. Um, Shadow functions are generally thought to be the dark side of your personality, especially for INFJs. These are things that you avoid, but you're kind of drawn to them at the same time. And they also are things that show up at the worst of times. So they're not something that you see every single day. And the type of behaviors that come out of them don't really match up with the rest of your personality. So they leave you guessing. And this could also be a reason that you're not really sure of what your personality type is. Maybe you have different things that come up from time to time and you're like, well, that doesn't match up with what an INFJ is. So maybe I'm really not an INFJ. Maybe you are an INFJ. You just have some shadow functions that come out sometimes. So let's talk about what they are. Shadow functions also they go in the same way that your regular functions do. So you have 4 different ones. The dominant one is the extroverted intuition, which is the possibilities of the future. The auxiliary function is introverted feeling. That is what's important to me, or how do I feel. The tertiary one is extroverted thinking. So this is how things happen. And the inferior one is introverted sensing, which is more focused on the past. A lot of these shadow functions I've noticed have come up when you feel upset, angry, or out of control some way. They are pretty much subconscious or unconscious for us, so we don't notice them. And a lot of times INFJs, we struggle to recognize how we feel in the moment. And so we might struggle to identify these things as well. Other people are a lot better at identifying them for us. But like I said, they come up at the worst times, when you're angry or you feel out of sorts or you feel like you're out of control. If you've had one of those moments where you've behaved way differently than what you usually do and you're like, wow, that was kind of shocking, I don't know what to think about that, you should definitely consider shadow functions for that one. I found some information on a website called Psychology Junkie. They have labels for each one of these things, which I thought fit really well. So the first one, we said the first shadow function is extroverted intuition, and the label that they gave it is the opposing role. So this one is the most developed shadow function, but all of them are really pretty much subconscious. We don't really notice any of them at all. So our dominant function is introverted intuition, right? And that gives us the ability to almost see the future. We just know things. We can see what's coming. In contrast, extroverted intuition is having a sense of all the possibilities that the future could hold. It's being open to tons of different options. So for us, with our dominant function, introverted intuition, we like to focus on one scenario, maybe 2 scenarios. We don't like tons of possibilities. And part of that comes from our judging preference, right? We want to be organized. We want to narrow things down. We want it to be simple and easy. So we like to narrow things down, right? We can only see the future one way. We might be able to see it 2 ways. Now we'll consider a lot of possibilities, but then we'll narrow it down to just the one thing. For the shadow function, extroverted intuition, this is being open to tons of possibilities and not being able to know which one is which. Not being able to know which one is the right one, because there isn't a right one. It's just all the possibilities. I know there's been a lot of times for me where I've been stuck in, it kind of feels like this awful position where you're like, I don't want so many possibilities. I just want to know the thing. There have been a couple times when I was in college. I started college when I was 16 because I could take college classes in high school and they counted for both high school and college. So by the time I actually graduated from high school, I had almost 2 years of college done. And I remember sitting with the counselor, the college counselor, picking out the next classes for the next semester. And she was like, you need to decide what your major is. And I'm like, oh no. Like, no, I thought that I had 2 years to pick that out. And she's like, no, you really need to decide. Like, this semester, you're going to end up taking classes that you may not need depending on what your major is. And that felt like the weight of the world on my shoulders. Because I was thinking I have to make all the decisions for the rest of my life today. And having all of those possibilities just felt completely overwhelming. It felt like that launched me into this feeling of being out of control. I couldn't pick one and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had that same feeling when, after I got laid off from my dream job, I spent a year and a half looking for a job. And I knew that I ended up back in the Midwest, and I knew that I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be somewhere else. And for a while, I really struggled because I didn't know where I wanted to be. And it was like having too many possibilities was worse than not having enough possibilities, you know? So that extroverted intuition can be very problematic. If you get stuck in that, that's something to consider. That it could be that shadow function that's popping up for you. Okay, so the second one is called Introverted Feeling, and it is labeled the critical parent. Introverted feeling is knowing what's important to me. What are my morals, my values, and my emotions? Now, our primary function, in our primary functional stack, the opposite for us is extroverted feeling. We are generally focused on how other people feel, right? We are really good at figuring out how other people feel. What are their emotions? What are they going through? What can I do to make their life better? When you're talking about our shadow functions, though, that means turning it around and figuring out how we feel about stuff. To me, a lot of times that kind of feels like torture. I don't want to know how I feel. I want to know how everybody else feels. And I'm generally a person who will go around and ask all of my friends, hey, how do you feel about this? What do you think about me doing this? I was in this situation where somebody said this horrible, awful thing to me. How would you feel if somebody said that to you? It's like taking a survey of what all of my friends think, and then I'll combine all of that information and go, hey, this is how I should feel. This is how most of them feel. This is how I should feel. It works so much better than being able to sit down by myself and go, ooh, how do I feel about this? Now, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm just saying that's what I do. A lot of times this feeling will come up when you have struggles or failures in your life, right? When you're forced to make a decision and you get really, really stressed and indecisive. That's usually that introverted feeling, shadow function, because you really don't know how you feel. And it could be really something simple, like one of your friends or family members saying, hey, what do you want for dinner? Or how do you feel about something? Like, more recently, how does COVID make you feel? How did you feel about the lockdowns? How do you feel about anything? Really, there's so many things. I can't even pick one. Speaking of COVID, when we experience significant amounts of stress in our lives, especially when it's negative, we tend to avoid how we feel. So for me, when the whole COVID thing hit, March of 2020, I wasn't really focused on how I felt. I was focused on how everybody else was feeling. What can I do for you? What do you guys need? And it wasn't just my podcast, my Instagram, my blog. It was my family, my friends. Some of them were a lot like me. You know, they're worried about everybody else. Some of them were freaking out. And I noticed that I soaked up some of their freaking out. And that sort of came for me later on. And by the time I started to freak out, most of everybody else was okay. When I say that it takes me 6 months to a year to figure out how I'm feeling, I'm not joking about that. It really does take that long. In the moment, I feel like I'm okay. Like, this isn't that bad. Everything's going to be okay. And it might even be like, that's what I'm saying, that everything's going to be fine. It's totally fine. And it'll be 6 months later, or as much as a year later, before I'm like, you know what? I'm not totally fine. It's not okay. There's something really wrong here. It just takes that long to process everything, to come to terms with everything, and to say, hey, this isn't okay. I don't feel okay. And it may take a little bit longer for me to say, this is actually how I feel. I'm angry. I'm sad. You know, to be able to name the exact feelings that I'm feeling. I say that because I want you to know that that's normal. A lot of people will tell you that you're repressing how you're feeling, you're avoiding it. I don't believe that. I believe that it takes INFJs a longer amount of time to process things than it does most people. And that's okay. It's totally fine for us to take time. There's no reason why we have to freak out at the same time that other people do. We can let them freak out, and then we can freak out later. It's totally fine. But part of the reason is it could come from this shadow function. Okay, so the next one that we have to talk about is our tertiary shadow function, which is extroverted thinking. Extroverted thinking, the name for it is called the trickster. It's called that because it tricks you into defending your ego. It causes you to react defensively or critically because of how it distorts your view of yourself and others. I've had this happen to me a few times. I had a situation recently where I had something really, really bad happen at work. And I thought that I was going to lose my job. And I was really, really extremely upset about it. It was the worst stress that I have had in a long time, including being sick most of last year. For about 2 weeks, I had these massive migraine headaches, and I was just panicked, trying to figure out what I was going to do, how to fix the situation. And it wasn't something really that I could control. It depended on 2 or 3 other people and what they were going to say. And it wasn't something that I had done either. It wasn't like I had messed up some big project or something. It wasn't that. It was completely out of my control. But because I was under so much stress and I was so worried, I started to think that other people were out, that they were against me, that they were setting me up for failure. And that just happened to be right after one of my friends had sent me a message about shadow functions, and when I started digging into them, that was right before that. So then all this massive stress happens. And then I start thinking that a couple of my friends are like out to get me, that they've conspired against me and they have caused some of this problems. And in that moment, even though I was under so much stress and I had this migraine headache and I just felt awful, I started thinking about the shadow function. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's this shadow function that has distorted how I'm viewing myself and how I'm viewing other people. Maybe they're not really out to get me. maybe they haven't contributed to this at all. Maybe they haven't done what they should, but maybe my thinking has been distorted a little bit because of all of this stress. It was really this huge breakthrough for me because I know that I have felt that way in the past, that other people had like turned against me, but I didn't know why. And that's really pretty abnormal for me. I'm not really paranoid about other people. I generally don't really think about other people and whether they care about me or are trying to sabotage me or something. But in this situation, it was like this super strong feeling. And I wanted to believe that it was my intuition. But then once I started thinking about this shadow function, and then once I let things play out a little bit more, and the stress went away, and then I started thinking when I wasn't in a stressed state of mind, then I could see things a lot differently, right? So that's definitely something to think about when you're in a situation where you feel like you're threatened, where you feel like your ego is threatened, especially when it revolves around self-love or self-esteem. If you feel like somebody is treating you like you're stupid, that's one of the things that makes me so angry so fast. Like, do not treat me like I'm stupid. If you feel like somebody's treating you like that, this is one of the places where this one can come out a lot. It will trick you into thinking that other people, maybe it might even trick you into thinking that other people are treating you like you're stupid when they're really not. But it can cause us to make some huge mistakes and have some really poor judgment in those moments. My friend was telling me, he's an INFJ, and he was telling me that he's experienced the same thing too. So I would caution you to think about that in those times. Okay, so the last one is Introverted Sensing, and this one is labeled the demon. Very ominous name for this one. Now, this shadow function, it's the very least of the functions, so you will see it the least as well. It is the worst of the worst. So by the time you see this function, you're probably going to be so stressed out that you're at your absolute breaking point. This function is how we view the past. People who use introverted sensing, when they're able to use it well, they place a high value on their past experiences, and they look to the past in order to show them how they should act in the future. So for INFJs, our main inferior function is extroverted sensing. That deals with what's happening right now, and it engages our senses in what's happening right now. That function is only developed to like a 3 to 4 year old's level of intelligence for most people, because sensing just really isn't our thing. We are much better at intuition than we are at sensing, right? So our main inferior function is extroverted sensing. So when we talk about introverted sensing, this is like, it haunts us, right? It's never a good thing. We don't focus on good things that we've done in the past. We typically only remember the bad things. or we remember the bad things a lot better than we remember the good things. We dwell on the things that we think of as failures, things that have caused us a lot of pain and suffering, things that we want to change. And a lot of times we even misremember things to fit into the story that we're telling ourselves in the moment. This can be really, really difficult, especially when you consider where you are when you get to this function. So you have to be at your absolute breaking point. So you're under so much stress. I mean, when I was at the Trickster, which was one above this, I literally thought my whole life was going to be over. I thought I was going to lose my job, my apartment, my car, that I was going to have to sell most of the stuff in my apartment, that I was going to be out on the street, living on a street in a tent, if I could even afford to buy a tent, right? I've been in that situation before. So for me, it felt like 10 times worse than before, because before I didn't know what I was getting into. I just knew it was bad. But now it's like, oh, I know this. I've been here before. I know how bad it is, and I don't want to go there again. So I felt like I was stressed to the absolute max. And maybe it was a combination of the Trickster and the Demon, both of those two, because I was remembering things in the past, probably a lot worse than what they actually were. It feels like it's the end of your life. It feels like nothing is ever going to be the same. Nothing is ever going to be the way that I thought that it was going to be. I'm never going to get out of this. It's not going to be okay. And there's nobody that can tell you that anything is going to be okay. When it gets to that point, it's really, really bad. It is helpful to know at that point that, hey, your mind could be tricking you. And maybe you just might need to calm down just a little bit. But that's also why it's good to know that you have these shadow functions and what they are. It will help you a little bit. It's not, for me, I guess because I had just learned about shadow functions, it wasn't like, okay, that fixes everything. It was just like, okay, let me pause before I cut my friends out of my life and see if, what I'm thinking right now is actually true, or if it's just because I'm stressed out. So it could help you there. You don't want to make any type of big decisions when you're in those situations, because it definitely disrupts the way that you normally handle things. I'm sure the last question that you have is like, these aren't good things, right? So can we fix them? Is there a way that we can just like fix all of this so that we can just be better people? As INFJs, we're always constantly wanting to improve, right? So can't we fix these things? And the answer is, well, you can be aware of them. I'm certainly aware of them now. But shadow functions in general, and a couple of your primary functions, they generally reside in your unconscious or your subconscious. You don't even know that they're there. You don't see them. It's not like you see them every day, hopefully. Can you improve how you react to things? Yeah, for sure you can. You can recognize that they're there. You can stop yourself in the moment and say, okay, I understand that this could be because of stress, and I'm not gonna make life-changing decisions today. I'm not gonna lash out at my friends or my family members when I'm in this kind of stress. That certainly helps. You can improve some of your functions. You can improve the bottom two of your regular functional stack, which is your introverted thinking and your extroverted sensing. Those are definitely things that once you know about them, you can make improvements on them. You can dive into those parts of your personality a little bit better, for sure. Some people ask me, can you make wholesale changes to your personality, or can you change your personality type? I do not believe that you can change your personality type. No, I don't believe that you can make wholesale changes. I don't believe that you can go from being introverted to extroverted. I don't think that's a thing. And I don't think that you should have to. I strongly believe that you're born with the personality type that you have. It is who you are. And I don't see why you should change that. You can definitely learn how to be more outgoing. You can learn how to be more sociable, but that doesn't mean that you're going to gain energy from being around people, right? So you can learn how to function in those situations. You might even learn to like being sociable, possibly. But I don't think that that's going to change where you get your energy from. And I believe that's the same of all 4 of the preferences. And I believe that's the same out of your functions as well. I don't think that you can change the fact that as an INFJ, we have extroverted feeling and we're focused on other people's feelings. You can be aware of your feelings, right? You can learn how to name your feelings faster. You can learn how to process your feelings more efficiently. But at the end of the day, that's not going to change that inherently you are focused on other people. Well, like I said, I don't think that there's anything wrong with being an INFJ. I don't think there's anything wrong with being born the way that we are. I think that a lot of the reason that people want to change their personality type is because we grow up in a society that tells us that we're wrong for being the way that we are, right? I've seen job descriptions that say, we're looking for outgoing people who like to have fun. And I'm like, pass. I'm not outgoing and I don't like mandatory fun. That's what I call it. Because most of the things that I think are fun, they don't think are fun, right? I don't want a ping pong table in the middle of the place that I work. I don't want an open office environment. I don't want music going in the background. I don't want to be involved in 1,200 meetings every single day. No, I don't want to work on group projects constantly. I don't want to pretend that I like any of those things either. I would really just like to be accepted and appreciated for my personality the way that it is. And honestly, that's my goal. That's my goal with my blog and my podcast. It's my goal with a lot of the work that I do, because I want you to know that you're perfect just the way that you are. And I want to help you understand yourself better, because I think that when we understand ourselves better, that we can understand other people better. And I believe that a lot of the problems that we have in this world, in society, especially nowadays in the United States, I believe that a lot of those problems could be solved with understanding, that a little bit of understanding and a little bit of acceptance goes a long way. So, all right. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. I hope you learned a lot about functions. If you want to learn more about them, you can go to my website, which is infjwoman.com. I'll post a link for the blog posts in the show notes. There are 2 blog posts. If you go to the top, there's a button on the menu that says blog, and there are 2 blog posts. There are 2 blog posts about functions. One of them is about our main functions, and one of them is about shadow functions. And both of them dive a little bit deeper into what these are than we did today. So anyway, thank you for listening again, and we'll see you again next week. So you just watched that video, and I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you want some more amazing information about INFJs, check out these videos right now. I'll see you there.